I agree. A lot of, well, here's the problem. This is true of any debate. This is true of any argument. Semantics and chronology. Those are the two biggest things you're going to have in almost any argument.
I forget, what's chronology?
Basically, the time and place where something happened. Let me give you a prime example of a chronology issue. This is going to seem irrelevant when we talk about it in the grand scheme, but this is something that I've done. You may or may not be aware, but I have been a lifelong Nintendo fan. I've always loved Nintendo. I've always got the Nintendo systems. And at one point during the sort of N64 era where the PlayStation 1 really took off, my mom got it for my brother and I, and I still had one at my grandma's house, but back at her house we had the PlayStation. Well, years later, when the PS2 came back, and it was backwards compatible, and it was one of the first systems on the main market to actually do this idea that you could put in old games from the old system and play it. And Nintendo never did this, but there's a reason Nintendo never did this. One, it's expensive. Two, they were working with a cartridge-based technology that advanced so much from year to year that it was literally impossible to do so. They just were not shaped the same, the technology was different, and they couldn't make the graphics as sharp and defined on a single system if they included the backwards compatible hardware. Well, to this day, she tells me, oh, well, I went over to, the Sony PlayStation because it's backwards compatible and we didn't have to buy all those games again. And I'm like, Mom, it was the first one. You see, it wasn't backwards compatible because it was the first system in the line. Of course, that was true when you bought the PlayStation 2, but that was years later. You're kind of having a weird time traveler fantasy here.
I hate that. Do people actually love to have that?
Yeah,
that's weird.
My mom
I hate
doesn't.
chronology about that.
It's an issue of chronology. Let's say yeah. So basically, I've dealt with that same argument year after year after year after year, and I'm like,
is that like some sort of a fallacy?
Maybe, but
genetic fallacy for taking something to be true because of its origination. I think that's what it is.
Maybe, but yeah, so basically that was I have always had a lot of problems with issues of chronology. People don't always remember what sequence things happened in, and they make arguments based on things after the fact.
They're basically arguments on being has some sort of different genre.
Yeah. So,
I'm thinking, let's convert this into a words and meaning discussion. Let's all do the Indian style for sake of the last day.
You mean the talking stick?
No, I mean sit Indian style, like right here, like kindergarten. You guys ever do that?
Oh, you mean sitting down? Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Camera down.
You know what? No, seriously, we should for the fall semester actually fashion our own talking stick. We should make it.
That's what I wanted to do.
That should be like our own little art project.
It should because it'll give everyone.
I'll circle around right here, so that way it's kind of like.
Are we really?
Oh yeah.
I'm so tired.
I
know, on the desk, I'm going for.
I'm on the desk. Because I'm reading. You know this thing for work, right?
And plus, I just realized this one wasn't recording.
So
at least he's recording right there, so. Alright.
Oh, at least we have one room.
I just really don't like
You guys look like gods from up here, dude. This is kind of scary.
Oh, yeah, it makes me feel better.
You should be used to it.
My splendor.
No, anyway. Okay, now.
Alright, cool, dude. I haven't done this since kindergarten. This is
Alright,
cool.
see,
It's been a while.
Alright, you get this way, I'll get that way. And we're going to convert this into words and meaning because I find it, at this point, very, very important that we understand what we're talking about, understand meaning before we could actually tackle any philosophical concept. Maybe we'll have to postpone free will until, I guess, more rigorous, I don't know, preparation has been done.
Yeah, and maybe when the Catholic Newmans actually show up, that'd be
Yeah.
good. Yeah. Because, I mean, they seem excited, so we could probably just save that one. They said they might show up, they did not, but what can you do? Que sera, sera.
I didn't know what Tony meant by this, but he thought you guys were wasting your time. I was like, what are you talking about? Wait, for what? About the Catholic Community Club? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, for free will? Maybe it was a discussion, I don't know.
Okay.
It's okay, I'll tell you.
No,
Your time.
Tony's a hardcore determinist. Your time, there's no free will.
Okay, Okay, let's start with
Edit it out.
words and meaning. So I think from the logic class, it's most fresh right now that there are different ways that we can grab meaning, but I think one of the most obvious is we start from the bottom of the ladder to get to the top.
Yeah.
There's the lexical definitions, which is, you guys ever, I'm not sure if you guys ever tried this, but like you look in the dictionary to find what a word means, and you end up finding another list or a paraphrase of some other stuff. And if you try to get to the bottom of, I guess, at least what one, try to grab the meaning of one word to its simplest form, you walk yourself immediately in a circle, because all you're doing is you're looking at a word to give you more words.
Well,
A
yeah,
paraphrase.
understandably, but as we are primarily, or at least I think we're primarily English speakers, and
We got one more.
Oh, that one's on?
Yeah.
That one's on, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, as we're primarily English speakers, we do speak, Romance languages or whatever you would consider English, and it does root to Latin, so we can often use, those sort of etymology to usually get the at least the purest form of a word.
Well, yeah, but
I
actually,
wouldn't
English
say
is
that.
not Latin.
Not Latin?
It's Anglo.
Oh, Anglo.
He's just talking about the words that you know. Like, you can't really, like, if a dictionary tells you that this means something that you don't know, you kind of have to find new words to understand
Yeah.
that.
Oh, okay.
And not only that, but I think etymology, well, the etymology, first of all, is that simply is just the history or the origin of that word.
Yeah.
That wouldn't tell you necessarily, I guess, the multiple contexts which a word can have.
Yeah.
Because a word, again, can have multiple meanings, but even if it had just restrictively one meaning, etymology would just give you the history. So
True.
I'm focusing more just on meaning.
True. Yeah, there is one issue that etymology searching comes up. It gives you the truest, purest meaning of a word, but it does not give you the conversational meaning of a word. Because ultimately, words change over time. The greatest example of this, at least in my experience, was if you look for the etymology of the word demon, because it becomes very blurry, because obviously our culture is very colored by Christianity. However, the etymology of the word is Greek, and it has nothing to do with, evil, malevolent beings. It just means spirits. It's completely neutral. It could be good. It could be bad. It doesn't matter.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So ultimately, the culture that the West has ultimately changed the meaning of that word.
Yeah, okay, so let's, then I guess it's not fair to completely discredit etymology as far as grabbing meaning, because eventually, from, I guess, past a series of different cultures interpreting it slightly differently, there's a variation of meaning grabbed in this trend. So it seems that, I guess, lexical definitions, terms as we find in the dictionary, are subject to change over time. Nonetheless, lexical definitions...
Urban Dictionary.
Yeah, okay, whatever. But lexical definitions, nonetheless, are agreed upon by a culture or a society at a given period of time. Let's say the word church today has a very specific definition. It probably meant very different in the days of the Orthodoxy, or things like that. They probably defined it, and not only that, but each culture defines it probably slightly.
Like my example, very easily, the ancient Greeks and demon as opposed to the Christian and Western world and demon.
I think Scott is bald was an example that he gave as far as lexical definitions. Because I guess that lexical would be like, yeah, someone's bald, or more specific, I think is stipulative. I think that's what it is. It's like, no, well, you have more hair on the side than on the top. That's more of a specific.
Well, there's stipulative and there's lexical. Lexical is agreed upon by a majority. So if everybody in the room says, yeah, he is bald, because we have all a very similar understanding of the characteristics of baldness. I mean, and there's also a danger in saying that in understanding specifics and very vague understandings of a word. So a good definition usually tries to lie in between those two, like a golden mean of those two. You don't want to say Scott has 26 million hairs on the head. That means hair. The absence of that, 0 hairs, literally absolute 0 means bald. And if he has maybe a little hair that sticks up, then all of a sudden he's not bald. He has
one hair.
One hair. Yeah.
Right, and that would be a stipulative meaning, correct?
Stipulative would be, if I remember correctly, a subjective understanding into a word. So, say for instance, when I say God, I'm gonna mean God very specifically. I'm not gonna mean Buddha. I'm not gonna mean something else. I'm gonna mean an all-powerful, all-loving, all-knowing, or something. So in that respect, we kind of assign ahead of time a sort of definition to a particular word, even though it has a conventional lexial.
Yeah, actually...
Lexical, which one is it?
Actually,